Oh boy, we're back. And we're starting with an episode that's over an hour long. And at times you certainly feel like it could have been trimmed down a bit. However, there are many things I like about this one. So let's crack on. The opening throws you off massively, because suddenly the gang are at this quarry with an insanely high volume of walkers waiting to escape. The gang are joined by some more Alexandrites who we haven't been introduced to yet, so we'll wait and see whose name is worth mentioning later on. They appear to be forming some plan to get the walkers out and lead them somewhere, and we'll find out more about this shortly. The episode is split between black and white shots to pick up where season 4 ended, and full colour shots to show present times. I've always thought black and white shots with high contrast suits horror scenes really well, so I wish the black and white shots in this episode were used for some of the more gory scenes, but I guess we can't always have what we want. I'm not going to keep switching between timelines like this episode does, because that would be a real headache to try and explain the plot. So, after Rick shoots the horrible husband, he and Morgan take his body outside of the walls, but they still have to bury him to respect the fact that he had a family, and the community won't just let them throw him in the trash like he deserves.
I'm not gonna be buried in a grave. When I'm dead, just throw me in the trash.
Rick suggests they could just leave him in the bushes, but Morgan says that's not who you are, believing that Rick is still the same person that he knew way back in episode 1. This is where they stumble across the quarry, and they realise that the exit road, which is temporarily blocked, leads directly towards Alexandria.
They've had walkers at their walls, but a lot of them, maybe most of them, they wound up here.
They tell everyone back home and come up with a plan to redirect the walkers when they eventually push this lorry off the road. Their plan is to set checkpoints signalled by balloons to ensure the walkers are heading down the desired path, using a car and Daryl's bike to keep the herd chasing. It's a very long, drawn-out process, and once you've gotten over how cool this shot looks with Daryl and the herd, the excitement disappears. Oh no. I've realised we need to jump back in time a little bit here, and I said we wouldn't do that. Fuck's sake. Some of the Alexandrites aren't happy with Rick and his group being members of their community, and Eugene is caught eavesdropping on their scheme to get rid of them.
He heard.
I didn't. I mean,
Carter?
Didn't.
Rick comes back just in time to catch them threatening Eugene, and he shows them that no one messes with Rick Grimes.
You really think you're gonna take this community from us? From Glenn? From Michonne? From Daryl? From me?
Morgan giving him a saddened glance, disapproving of the man he's turning into. I don't quite get Morgan's deal. He's fresh back on the scene and we have no idea why he's so different to the crazed lunatic we saw before. Hopefully we do get to learn how he got better, otherwise this new behaviour is just odd. The redirection plan is going smoothly for the most part. We lose this one randomer, but honestly who cares. But then a loud continuous horn starts blaring in the direction of Alexandria, so their plan appears to be ruined.
He's pulling the back half off the road. Oh, God.
The episode opens with Enid's parents repairing a car, and she calls out to say that walkers are coming. It then hard cuts to her crying in the car, with squid ink all over the windows. It's just squid ink, YouTube, calm down. I've heard this trick works for keeping monetization, so let's see how it goes. I'm still going to have to pixelate the obscenely gory stuff, just to play it safe. The rest of the opening shows her surviving on the road, with one particular visual that I won't be forgetting anytime soon. It's her coming across this tortoise and then eating it raw. Yeah, she's gonna have some funky diarrhea tonight. The visual that we're supposed to be more intrigued by, as the title suggests, is Enid writing JSS everywhere. But I've learnt this show is a big fan of stupid catchphrases and attempting interesting wordplay. Oh look, Enid just spelt JSS with the turtle bones. Ugh. In their defense, this example is revealed to be a mantra she kept in mind while surviving out on the road, using any means necessary to just survive somehow. That's what JSS is. It's the kind of clunky philosophical phrase you'd expect a teenage girl to come up with, so I guess I'll give it a pass in this case. Jesse's son is rebelling against her because she's trying to act like it's okay that Rick killed his dad. And I gotta say, I'm gonna side with him on this one.
Your father was dangerous.
Rick is dangerous.
He doesn't have anything to do with this.
Of course his dad had to be dealt with, but you shouldn't pretend like everything is okay now. Your son no longer has a dad. That's gonna mess up his mind big time. While Carol is watching some woman outside, she gets jumped by a stranger wielding a machete, and before long the whole town is taken over by these crazy wackos, all brandished with the W symbol. The blaring horn that we heard in the previous episode is revealed to be a lorry that one of the invaders crashed into their walls. But I'm not going to play the audio for this because honestly, I really hate continuous loud singular notes. It gives me an uncomfortable feeling of irritability, and I get this anxious feeling not knowing when or if the sound is going to stop. And I sure do hope this is a common problem people have, and I'm not just some freak of nature. Carol continues to be as cool as a cucumber by blending in as one of the W dudes so that she could take them out more easily. Morgan tries to kill her buzz by saying, "No, killing is bad, and you're bad for killing, okay?" Morgan comes face to face with the guy he met by the campfire, and when Morgan gets the upper hand, he still refuses to kill him.
I'm sorry.
I really enjoyed this episode, so this season's looking pretty good so far. In this episode, Rick races ahead of the herd to try and redirect them again. And after killing another Alexandrite who got bit, the community once again looks at Rick with concern. Nothing new or interesting about that. What is interesting though is what happens to Glenn's group, who have also raced ahead of the herd, but in the direction of Alexandria. The halfway point is a small town, which is surrounded by walkers shortly after their arrival.
Shit.
Nicholas.
In my recaps, I've skipped over this weird dynamic going on between Glenn and Nicholas, where Glenn is trying to get him back on the right track after making the cowardly decision to sacrifice Noah.
What you've done, you're gonna sit with it a while. Because I don't want you out here tomorrow. You're not ready. You will be. Sometime soon I'll make sure of it. And then you start to make it right.
He keeps forcing Nicholas to make critical choices to keep their group alive, but I'm a firm believer in that you can't force people into being good leaders. It's a trait you develop over time, and maybe this situation where the survival of a whole community is at stake isn't the best time to throw some nervous idiot into the deep end and expect him to swim. Nicholas makes the choice to hide out in a pet shop, and I like the small detail of this cat skeleton, or whatever animal this was. Nicholas and Glenn split off from the group to complete their task of sending up a signal flare, but the assigned building is burnt down, so they have to scramble to find another way out. And then they wind up being trapped in a dead-end alley. They climb atop this dumpster, and Nicholas sees that there's no way of making it out of this alive, and decides to go out his own way.
Thank you.
Glenn falls into the walkers with Nicholas landed on top, and the walkers have themselves a wonderful feast while Glenn screams out in panic. So he's dead. That's it, he's done for. R.I.P. Glenn, right? Right? Well, the next episode jumps back in time, so we'll have to wait and see. I love this episode. It shows you the timeline between Morgan losing his mind and how he was rehabilitated by this unexpected pacifist character we see here. Morgan burnt down his house while repeating his catchphrases, adages that only exist within his mind, like,
We weren't supposed to be there. You had the knife. You were supposed to. You were supposed to. You know you were supposed to.
As he goes on a rampage, killing random strangers on a road, he comes across this secluded cabin where the owner politely asks him not to kill his goat.
Can you step away from the goat? She's not yours. And I still need her. I'm still figuring out how to make cheese.
When Morgan stalks around the cabin looking for the guy, he gets knocked out.
Sorry.
A pretty interesting opening, but I have to be critical about the editing choices when they're showing Morgan's mind going foggy when he encounters danger. Notice how they edited the effects to match the beat of the music. This for me totally breaks immersion. It gives the scene a sense of breaking the fourth wall, whereas effects are supposed to improve your immersion. I'm not watching a music video here, we're watching a man suffering from PTSD. If they matched this effect with his heartbeats, that would have worked much better than this. Morgan wakes up inside a cage and immediately requests for this man to kill him, a request he repeats over and over.
Kill me!
But this man, who goes by the name Eastman, is a pacifist who practices the art of Aikido to defend himself, in a way that only kills his opponents when necessary. Morgan suffering from PTSD prevents him from feeling safe around people, but with Eastman's relentless friendship in the face of Morgan's outbursts and his guidance in the art of Aikido, Morgan makes great strides towards getting his mind back in check. Predictably and unfortunately, Eastman was a one-episode character, getting bit by a walker as he protects Morgan. It's a real shame because his character was super likeable. His dialogue felt natural.
For the rest of your life, you could stay here. But you shouldn't stay here. Can't expect such splendid guests as yourself to show up.
He had an interesting background in forensics, and his disposition of kindness and being welcoming to new people despite how dangerous they might be was a refreshing type of character for this universe. Most of all, I'm now at peace with Morgan's new approach on life, as he's carrying on Eastman's legacy, and now that his mind is back in check, he can stop with all of these gibberish phrases that he keeps writing. The episode ends with Morgan in Alexandria talking to the creepy W guy he knocked out, and he tries convincing him to turn his mind away from violence, just like Eastman did for him. But this guy seems way too far gone to be saved, and he's got this nasty infected looking cut, so he knows he's probably going to die and therefore has nothing to lose, leaving Morgan with conflicting thoughts on how to handle the situation. Deanna looks on in horror as Rick charges towards the gates with the Walker herd. Luckily, only half of the herd kept following the sound of the truck horn, and although it seems counterintuitive to run back home with half still following, you've got to imagine how exhausted this man is. He no doubt has to regroup at this point. Rick then gives the community another lecture on surviving, hilariously telling them to keep quiet, while not keeping his own voice down with the guidance.
And we know what we need to do. We keep noise to a minimum. Pull our blinds at night. Even better, keep the lights out.
Reminds me of 28 Days Later when Selena yells at Jim.
Quiet. It's infected.
The rest of the episode is kinda dull. Not much really happens. It's just relationships developing in the community. Carl forms a rivalry with this kid.
Fatality.
Rick hooks up with Jesse, Tara hooks up with the doctor, and later Maggie starts losing hope that Glenn is still alive. Daryl, Sasha and Abraham are leading the Walker herd, when all of a sudden some cars appear and start shooting at them. So it appears they now have two rival gangs to deal with, as the W dudes don't use guns. Yeah, I need to look up their actual name, I can't just keep calling them the W dudes. The Wolves. When do we learn this in the show? Well, it appears I overlooked the conversation where Morgan's talking to this guy next to the campfire, and he tells Morgan about a story about the first settlers in this country, and they worked with some people called wolves or something. Well, anyway, they manage to avoid the gunmen but get split up, with Daryl crashing out in this woodland area that's been burnt to the ground. And Abraham and Sasha take shelter in this car insurance office. Sasha does something here that really made me laugh, where she tells Abraham not to kill a walker because it leaves evidence that they were here. But she says this immediately after scratching a message into the door for whoever this Pixon guy is.
You're smarter than that. We don't need to leave breadcrumbs.
For the sake of keeping the timeline in order, I'll cover Daryl's story first. While walking through the charred forest, he comes across these people who mistake him for one of the gunmen, and they take Daryl as a bargaining chip for when the actual gunmen come looking for him. These randomers are trying to make their own settlement, but when they get back to their base, they find it full of walkers, assuming the worst has happened to their friend who was keeping watch. One of the women faints, and Daryl spots the opportunity to grab their bag and make a run for it. He opens the bag and finds a box of insulin, so he decides to go back to them and trade it for their gun. As they make the exchange, a giant truck heads towards them, and some guy calls out for the randomers to pay them what they owe. So Daryl helps these randomers to flee the area. Turns out getting this insulin back to them was a waste of time, because the diabetic woman gets herself killed in the silliest looking way. They came back to their greenhouse and saw that the two people looking after it have been burnt alive, presumably by the gunmen. And when this woman, let's call her Diabetes, leans down and the walker wakes up, she goes to stand up but then does this weird fall back down. And she smashes the melted glass that dripped down in the fire and hardened on the walkers. I had to rewatch a couple of times to even understand what I was seeing here. But yeah, Diabetes is dead. The randomers end up double-crossing Daryl, ordering him to hand over his bike and crossbow.
Sorry.
You're gonna be.
On to Abraham and Sasha. They pretty much just chill out in the office the entire episode. Although there is a cool moment where Abraham ventures outside to collect this RPG from a dead soldier. He struggles to tear away the RPG from the soldier and suffers an unexpected moment of PTSD, which I think is due to the fact that he's essentially stealing from another soldier. A very dishonourable act for an army guy. The soldier's decaying body weight makes him slide through the steel pole, which is super gross, but it leaves the RPG dangling for Abraham to collect. He also finds a box of cigars, making this the manliest loot collection ever. He also finds this army officer's uniform, and I think it looks dope, so I hope he keeps wearing it. Daryl arrives in town and picks them up driving a truck he found, and then radios Rick to see if he's still alive, with Rick ominously responding with the word
help.
So, we finally get some closure on what happened to Glenn, because like I said, he's 100% dead. Oh, what's this? He's crawling from under Nick's body and going under the dumpster? Oh, it's all okay then, I guess. I guess Nick's body must have been perfectly aligned with his, as the huge cluster of walkers bit into Nick's body and only Nick's body. But wait, that's not correct, because we have these shots that show that Nick was laying across him, meaning his upper torso, head and legs were completely exposed. But the walkers just happened to find Nick's belly more appealing. Glenn surviving this is total horse poo, and you know it. He waits under the dumpster until the walkers clear the area, and when he gets up, Enid throws him some water from the roof.
Hey, heads up! Shit. I said heads up!
I forgot to mention she ran away from the community, feeling it's no longer safe there. Glenn demands that she comes back home, feeling it would be irresponsible to leave her on her own, but then she runs away from him. Back in the community, the kid that scrapped with Carl now wants gun training, claiming to want to help defend the community, but his body language makes it so obvious that he has revenge in mind against Carl. Deanna's non-dead son Spencer attempts to shimmy across a rope to get to a car, but it goes horribly wrong, and Rick is angry at his stupidity, almost getting him killed.
What was that?
I was trying to help.
I'm in danger!
When Enid and Glenn arrive back, they see they can't get back in as it's surrounded by walkers. So they untie some balloons to go up in the air as a signal for the community to know they're still alive. And as they all look up in joy, the clock tower collapses, bringing down one of the walls. Also, we leave on this cliffhanger, not knowing if this kid is going to shoot Carl. I guess we should look up his name now. Okay, it's Ron. I wasn't expecting it to be Ron. In this cold open, we have Jesse's youngest and most annoying son listening to Tiptoe Through the Tulips on vinyl. You know, the kind of song that normal kids listen to. And this cold open concludes with a camera pan over to a trail of ants crawling over a cookie. A cool visual that foreshadows the way in which walkers are about to ascend upon Alexandria. Rick and Deanna do their best to fend off the walkers, but Deanna gets pushed onto a circular saw or something, so Rick rushes her off to find somewhere safe. They end up in Jesse's house, where Jesse's annoying son Sam is once again scared and confused.
I need you to turn off the music and shut the blinds! Because the monsters...
It's revealed that Deanna isn't just hurt from the saw, she got bit. And I like how human her reaction is.
Well... shit.
While Deanna does some farewell speech, Jesse's older son Ron gets his chance to confront Carl. The commotion of this alerting the grown-ups upstairs, and then some nosy neighbour walkers pop by to see what's going on.
Idly-ho, neighborinos!
What I like about this conflict is that Carl decides to lie about what happened and says that the noise was just the walkers trying to break in. Carl sympathising with Ron's grief and understanding why he'd be seeking revenge. Another conflict is underway, with Carol threatening to kill the wolf guy. Let's give him a proper name, shall we? He reminds me of Adam Driver, but like a messed up version of Adam Driver. So we'll call him Adam Drunk Driver. Morgan and Carol scrap over their disagreement on keeping him alive, with Morgan coming out on top with his Aikido skills. But then Adam Drunk Driver runs him down while he's distracted. He then takes this woman hostage. I can't remember her name. Why am I so bad at remembering names? But she's kind of a mid character anyway, so who cares? Rick and some of the others plan to make their escape, using the Walker blood disguise method once again. A method they should really try more often based on its temporary success. Deanna goes to take herself out, but then she decides to take the more glorious exit by eliminating some walkers with her remaining bullets. The episode ends with Sam being scared and confused once again, and he calls out for Mummy, suggesting that the next episode will open with him being torn to pieces by the walkers he's just alerted. Sasha, Daryl and Abraham get stopped in the road by some bikers, and based on their behaviour we assume they're on the same side as the people who shot at our gang earlier. It's in this standoff where they reveal that the name of their leader is Negan, a man who demands that his soldiers go out and gather stuff for him.
Your property now belongs to Negan.
While one of the bikers takes Daryl to the back of the van, the main biker dude holds up a gun threatening to pull the trigger. And then this amazing thing happens while he's giving the big man talk.
I'm not gonna kill you. You know what? Yes, I am.
If that didn't tickle your nips, we can't be friends. So the episode begins with our gang making their way through the Walker crowds. Which, yeah, sure, that's where we left off. But we also had the suspense of Sam calling for Mummy. I thought we were going to open the episode seeing walkers tearing into him for making noise. So that kind of feels like a setup for nothing. They decide to let Gabriel take Judith into the safety of the church, while everyone else goes to the quarry and gets their cars back. Kinda seems like she would be safer staying with Rick and heading away from this town right now. In a different part of town, Adam Drunk Driver is trying to escape Alexandria, taking the doctor character we don't care about, Denise, to try and recruit her as a wolf. But I don't see her being a very intimidating wolf, do you? She'd be more like a French bulldog puppy. Cut to night time and the gang still haven't left the community. How? How have they not left yet? I don't understand how you're still here. Were they walking in circles? How does it take half a day to walk through one town? I didn't realise they live in Disney World. Sam freaks out because he didn't get to meet Daisy Duck or whatever. And this time the walkers do take notice of him. Jessie gets eaten too because she's causing a riot scene, and Rick has to chop off her hand so that Cole can be freed from her grip. Older son Ron can take no more of Rick, now that he's got his entire family killed, and so he puts a gun up to him. Now, I want you to pay close attention to this part. Let's take this frame by frame. So when Ron's gun fires, it's at a downward angle, roughly at shoulder height. So in what world is that bullet passing through Cole's head, who's currently in an upstanding position? He'd have to have been kneeling and a lot closer to Ron for this gunshot wound to make any sense. Maybe they felt like the shock factor of this event would be a distraction enough for the audience, but they didn't account for nitpicking goblins like me. Well, anyway, Sam's dead for sure, and we're not so sure about Carl. Poor Carl. He's taking more shots than an Essex girl in Magaluf. We'll come check on him later. Adam Drunk Driver gets bit helping Denise fend off a walker, and Denise encourages him to see this as a sign that he can change to be a good guy. But then Carol shoots him dead. That's some good dark irony there. Maggie looks on in terror as Glenn is back on the scene trying to help, but he's completely swarmed by walkers. What a shame, what a pity, he's dead. Oh, no, wrong again. He's saved by a flurry of high-velocity bullets that once again fail to pass through very decayed walker flesh. I learned the difference between high-velocity rounds and high-caliber rounds thanks to the comments left on my Season 2 video. Now I'd like for the comments on this video to educate me on how the hell Glenn is still alive in this scenario. The streets are now an absolute partially censored mess. But ultimately the day is won, with few casualties to care about. Which of course means Carl is fine. He's just got a bit of a headache, bless him. Rick and Daryl find a truck filled with food and other essentials and take it back home, stopping at a gas station on the way back to see what else they can dig out from this upturned vending machine. Out of nowhere, this dude runs into Rick and explains that there's a bunch of walkers chasing him, so they shouldn't stick around for too long. Rick asks him for his name and he says,
Paul Rovia, but my friends used to call me Jesus.
You know they're not going to include a character with the name Jesus and not have him be a big part of the show. Jesus tricks them into running to the sound of firecrackers going off. A nice distraction so he can steal the van.
Sorry.
Hard to be mad at such a smart play. Jesus is a pretty cool guy. They find him again down the road after a tyre blowout, and Jesus shows off his neat combat skills, almost getting the better of them. But this is America, pal. Guns win every fight here. They drive into a field assuming they left Jesus behind, but somehow he managed to climb onto the roof of the truck. So it is written, so it shall be. Jesus will never leave us alone in this world. And yes, I'm going to be making lame Jesus jokes whenever he's on screen. Deal with it. They scrap with Jesus when he tries to steal the truck back, and he accidentally knocks it into reverse. As he jumps out, he gets hit by the truck door as it rolls into the lake, meaning no one gets to take home this loot. They take him back home, agreeing that he's just some guy who is trying to do the same thing they were by getting vital supplies for their community. And as they rest up for the evening, Rick and Michonne get a bit touchy-feely, and then they do some kissing stuff, which soon leads into the adult kind of kissing.
We know what we need to do.
What are you doing?
We keep noise to a minimum.
Jesus takes them by surprise by sneaking into their lovemaking room.
Nice cock.
Ever since their time alone in that office, Abraham and Sasha have been flirting, but he's just been friend-zoned by her as she's decided to swap her patrol shifts with Eugene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that?
Abraham's been thinking about that conversation while he's ginger nuts deep in Rosita. So now he's got to make up his mind and quit being a player. Jesus explains to the gang that he comes from a different community who make it their mission to set up trade agreements with different settlements. But it gets a bit more complicated than that, as we'll find out soon. Jesus leads them back to his home, and on the way sees that one of their cars is upturned, asking the gang to help him rescue any survivors, who he guesses will be hiding out in this building, which, as it turns out, he was right.
Friends of Jesus, we're here to get you out.
We're with Jesus, let's go.
It's gonna take me a while to take hearing his name seriously. One of the guys rescued is an obstetrician. Blah. An obstetrician. That's way too hard for me to say. This obstetrician scans Maggie's baby bump to make sure that her and the baby are all well. Wait, did I mention that she's preggers? I legit don't remember half the stuff I type. Jesus resides with his people in a place called the Hilltop, and the governor of this place is a weird AF man named Gregory.
I'm the boss.
I've never liked Gregory's vibe, and I can't remember if he turns out to be a bad guy or not, but I do remember not liking him very much. Gregory takes time to think about setting up a trade deal with Rick's gang. Meanwhile, some of the Hilltop crew come back with the terrible news that Negan isn't happy with them, and in response has killed some of their people. This guy sends Negan's warning by stabbing Greg in the tummy, showcasing how much power and influence this Negan fella has. Rick kills the attacker and tensions run high between these two groups, until Jesus calms everyone down to start forming a plan. Rick feels confident that he will be able to storm the Saviour's compound and kill Negan for them. We'll see, shall we? Rick calls a town meeting to explain their collaboration deal with the Hilltop, and how the only way to fulfill their end of the deal is to kill the Saviors. And look who has a problem with this.
We can't leave them alive.
Where there's life, there's possibility.
Well, them hitting us.
Hey, we're not trapped in this. None of you are trapped in this.
I feel like I'm going to start getting tired of his objections real soon. Abraham starts packing his bags, telling Rosita that he's leaving for good, and the reason he gives is colder than a penguin's nutsack.
Tell me! Tell me why!
When I first met you, I thought you were the last woman on Earth. You're not.
You know, you could just break up with her. It's not like you two are married or anything. This conversation ends with a hilarious moment from Eugene.
You try one of these, they're chewy. They, got some fat in them.
I'm calling it now. Eugene is on the spectrum. There's no way anyone without an atypical mind would read that situation and decide to start talking about cookies.
Fat in them.
I find it weird that Abraham would choose to tell her this now, as they're going on a mission together later in the episode. So why not tell her afterwards and save the awkwardness of having to work alongside each other? Talking about the mission, let's skip to it, because it's by far the most interesting part of the episode. So they trick the guards into thinking this random walker's head is Gregory's head, and they use it as a bargaining chip because this particular outpost wanted his head. It's not really explained that clearly in the show, I had to look it up. In exchange for the head, one guy goes in to give him his friend back, creating the opportunity for Rick's group to go in and start with the slashing, head stabbing and shooting. It's all pretty brutal stuff that kind of seems barbaric rather than an act of heroism, but the show reminds you that these people are cold murderers who take pictures of their victims and proudly display them. I don't know if this is enough for me to think that stabbing them in the head while they sleep is justified, but I suppose it's nice to see that Glenn does feel remorse doing it. It's looking like a successful mission, with everyone at this outpost wiped out. But then one last survivor goes to make his escape on Daryl's bike, and quickly gets taken down. Just as he's about to be shot, a voice comes through on his radio, telling Rick to back down, as some other saviors have taken Maggie and Carol.
We've got a Carol and a Maggie. I'm thinking that's something you want to chat about.
We see the faces of our captors, and it's pretty much a female-dominated deal. Speaking of deals, the ginger lady's bartering with Rick to see if they can make an exchange of their hostages.
Look, I know you're talking it over. It's a fair trade. Just come out. We do this. We all walk away.
They decide to sleep on the deal before confirming, and they take Maggie and Carol to this grimy warehouse-looking place. And we stay here for the remainder of the episode. Gonna skip over most of this one, because in the end, Maggie and Carol kill their captors. So there's no point in getting to know them for the purpose of this recap. It wasn't boring by any means, but we can't focus on non-essential characters and stories, even though we do hear about this ginger lady's normal life before all of this, and it is interesting to hear about her journey in becoming a saviour. When backup saviors arrive, Carol kills them in a very cruel but admittedly satisfying way by flicking her cigarette onto a fuel line she made and then trapping them in the room to burn alive. When Rick arrives with his hostage to make the deal and sees that Maggie and Carol are both free now, Rick gives this guy a chance to spill the beans on who Negan is, and he makes the claim that he is Negan, causing Rick to cut to the point.
I'm sorry it had to come to this.
If you've seen this show before, you know this guy is lying. And if not, well, sorry to spoil it. You'll be seeing the real Negan soon enough. Denise insists that she needs to go out on the next supply run. A, because she knows what medicine is needed, and B, she needs to learn how to defend herself from walkers. So Rosita and Daryl reluctantly bring her along for the ride. When they get the medical supplies, Denise gets her first taste of how brutal this world is, with a room containing a crib and upsetting notes left in blood. Meanwhile, Eugene and Abraham are scouting a nearby factory, as Eugene claims he can manufacture bullets, which if so is pretty cool. What isn't cool though, is Eugene also claiming that he doesn't need Abraham's protection anymore.
Thank you for your protection. I most certainly needed it between here and Houston, but your services are no longer required. You've outlived your usefulness to me.
What an absolute douche. You're lucky this man didn't kill you for your earlier betrayal. Abraham tells him to screw himself and to find his own way back home. Back to Denise, she risks her life to get her hands on some soda, and then enters a massive argument with Daryl and Rosita about living life to the max or whatever. And it somewhat comically ends with an arrow suddenly going through her head. This was one of those rare deaths where, despite how surprising it was, I was not emotionally invested at all. I felt nothing. The Bowman's revealed to be the guy who took Daryl's crossbow a few episodes back, and he's working for the Saviors now. Interestingly, half of his face is now burnt, and we do get to learn what happened here in a later episode. But this element of mystery for now is a cool way to strengthen your investments, so we keep watching the show and you keep watching my videos. This guy's name is Dwight. I know that he remains a character for a good while, which is why he gets a name straight away. He found Eugene out on the road and took him hostage, and Eugene does some quick thinking by telling them that Abraham is spying on them from the bushes. This distraction allows him to bite Dwight on the penis. Fellas, is it gay to bite a man's dick to save your friends? The Saviors scram back into the woods as our guys make the counterattack, and our guys manage to safely get back home, having to leave Denise's body on the tracks to carry Eugene. Back home, Carol left a note saying she's gone forever because she can't keep killing people, and she knows that Alexandria will keep being attacked by saviors, and if not saviors, it will always be someone else. For as long as they have supplies and shelter in Alexandria, others will want to take it for themselves. A reasonable view to hold, and honestly, who can blame her for leaving? On the road, Carol runs into some saviors, and she does her best impression of a broken bird to lull them into a full sense of control of the situation, only for Carol to then shoot them all down with a concealed gun. One guy survives and goes on the counterattack, and she jabs a spike through him, and so she gets to continue her journey. But later on, it's revealed that one other guy survived the shooting, and he's driven to live on to hunt down Carol. Also looking for Carol is Morgan and Rick, and after Rick nearly shoots an innocent person who's just out looking for his horse, Morgan tells him to go back home, and he'll continue searching for Carol in a more peaceful way. Daryl runs off to find the saviors, with some others trailing behind him hoping to stop him, but they all end up getting taken by the saviors, who were waiting in the woods anticipating their return.
Hi.
Also in trouble is Maggie. After a haircut, she starts getting sharp pains in her stomach, assuming something to be wrong with the baby. And nothing happens in this episode. We can skip over this one and continue on with season 7. The last day on Earth is peak Walking Dead. I genuinely forgot how amazing this season finale is, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get on with it. We get an idea as to how omnipresent the saviors are in their territories, communicating with each other and coordinating their attacks using bird call whistles. They hunt down this one random dude who broke their trade agreement, so Stephen Ogg and some other saviors use him to set up an example to demonstrate to whoever they're waiting for out on this road. Most of the main characters are in this RV, carting Maggie off to the hilltop to receive treatment, but they soon encounter the roadblock that Stephen Ogg set up.
He's someone who was with a whole lot of someones who didn't listen.
His character's called Simon. The least intimidating name in existence, but Simon is played by an intimidating man.
This is us about to make an example out of you.
He tells Rick that they're going to take all their stuff and kill one of his group for good show. Rick cockily tells them no deal and passively threatens Simon by saying it could be his last day on Earth.
No, but that is a good thing to bring up. What if it's the last day on Earth for you, for someone you love? Maybe you should be extra nice to those people in that RV, because you never know, just like that.
Abraham turns the RV around to find another road to Hilltop, but each road they take is blocked by saviors with increasing numbers. Now I'm going to cover off the less exciting part of this episode before we see how this journey concludes. Morgan finds Carol worse for wear and patches her up in the hope that she'll agree to come home, but then she runs away again, hoping that Morgan will just leave her be. The saviour she shot earlier finally catches up to her though, and he wants to make her death as drawn out as possible. He shoots her in the arm and then plans to do more, but Morgan comes along and cuts him down in a surprising act of violence. Then the guy who was looking for his horse shows up and helps them back on their feet. Now, back to the good stuff. The third roadblock they come to isn't made of saviors, but a chain link of walkers, and when they get closer they see one of the walkers has Michonne's dreadlocks sticking out his head, and another one has Daryl's arrows. So now we know something real bad is about to go down. They encounter another roadblock, this time a pile of logs that the saviors set alight, and then they hang the man from the bridge, to really send the message that there's no way out of this.
They would indicate they not only have people, but some big-ass toys and capabilities.
What it indicates is we are neck deep up creek with our mouths wide open.
Determined to outsmart the saviors, they come up with a plan where Eugene will drive the RV somewhere, and the rest will go on foot carrying Maggie through the woods, so they can hopefully sneak through undetected. And as they make their way through, it doesn't take long before that ominous whistling starts. So yeah, their plan is about to fail horribly. They get completely surrounded and outnumbered by the saviors, ordering them to their knees so they can finally meet the man, the myth, the legend, Negan.
Pissing our pants yet? Boy, do I have a feeling we're getting close.
The charisma Jeffrey Dean Morgan gives to Negan is unmatched by any other character in this show, and he is without a doubt the most intimidating villain. And we see this as he lays down the law on how things are going to be from here on out, telling Rick's group that killing a bunch of Negan's people is a crime that won't go unpunished.
You are so gonna regret crossing me in a few minutes. Yes, you are.
He also tells them that he owns them now. If they have any supplies, Negan automatically gets half, and the Saviors will ensure that this rule never gets broken. On to the punishments. He tells them his barbed wire wrapped bat, called Lucille, is going to beat one of Rick's group to a pulp. He approaches Maggie, causing Glenn to go into a fit of rage trying to defend her. This behaviour is strictly out of line in Negan's book, and he lets them know.
Don't any of you do that again. I will shut that shit down, no exceptions. First one's free. It's an emotional moment. I get it.
It's time for Negan to pick his victim, and instead of cutting right to it, he plays a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And when he gets to the end, we get a POV of whoever he's picked, and the episode ends with the awful sounds of Lucille turning someone's head into mush. Imagine how agonising the wait was when we had to wait for Season 7 to be released. When you guys blast my comment section asking for when the next Walking Dead video is, imagine that feeling of impatience and then amplify it by 1,000. That's what it felt like waiting for Season 7 to air, so we could finally find out who got bashed. Luckily for you, that information is mere minutes away. You couldn't ask for a better opening. The look on Rick's face, the teary-eyed threat he gives to Negan.
I'm gonna kill you. I didn't quite catch that. You're gonna have to speak up. Not today. Not tomorrow. But I'm gonna kill you.
And gotta mention this fog and lighting, the colour palette, it's all just mwah. Around the end of Season 7 is when things start getting questionable for me, but the opening few episodes of this season are faultless. I urge anyone who hasn't seen the show to at least watch up to this point. For the insult of threatening him, Negan drags Rick off into the RV to go for a little drive. We cut to the opening credits before we find out who Negan killed, just to keep you waiting that little while longer. Negan toys with Rick, teasing him to try and take the axe to get his revenge, and then proceeding to beat him down for trying.
Don't make me get up again.
And then to show how much Rick is now under his control, he throws his axe onto the roof and demands Rick goes fetch it for him. Rick knowing that if he doesn't do what he says, it's not just his life on the line, but the rest of his group. When Rick climbs atop the RV, he takes a moment to collapse down in grief, reflecting on what just happened. And here we finally see who got killed.
You can breathe. You can blink. You can cry. Hell, you're all gonna be doing that.
It's our boy Abraham. Damn, what a shame. But he takes it like the champ he is, going out by telling Negan to suck
my
nuts. As much as it sucks to see him go, this is a clever choice by Negan. Taking out the strongest guy weakens the group much more than, say, taking out Eugene and Darren. Still, Abraham will be missed greatly. He was awesome. Daryl punches Negan, unintentionally causing Negan to add another death to his penalty list. So now we gotta watch him bludgeon someone else to death.
First impressions are important. I need you to know me. Back to it.
God damn, that's heartbreaking. Seeing Glenn's eyeball popping out his socket while he tries to gargle the words
I'll find you
through the pools of blood in his mouth is just truly one of the most horrific scenes ever to be televised. I'm not sure how I'm even going to keep monetization on this. I might have to throw some spaghetti and meatballs on the screen to replace the grotesque visuals. I simply don't know how to handle this. Back in the RV, Negan reminds Rick that he owns him now. If he tells him to do something, he will do it. And he's going to provide supplies to the Saviors every week without fail. But Negan's not done driving his point home just yet. Next, he tells Rick to cut off Carl's arm. And if he refuses, he will kill everyone else as a punishment.
Pick up the axe. Not making a decision is a big decision. You really want to see all these people die?
Andrew Lincoln's acting as he begs for mercy here is next level.
Please, please. You answer to me. You provide for me. You belong to me.
I don't know how he manages to hyperventilate like this without passing out. Truly a sight to behold. It's an acting masterclass. I've never seen such a raw performance. Jeffrey Dean Morgan too, showing off his rage.
You answer to me. You provide for me.
Provide for you.
The Saviours leave them be for now, allowing the group to finally mourn together, with Maggie wanting to be left alone so she can be with Glenn, but ultimately being too broken and still too ill to be left alone, bearing in mind she was on a stretcher before this. Before the episode ends, we get this extremely sad imaginary scene of what the future could have been, with Glenn holding their son next to Abraham, all enjoying a nice meal together. Oh, look, spaghetti and meatballs.
I'll find you.
Carol wakes up in a daze to see that Morgan and the horse fella are fending off some walkers. Horse Guy is now accompanied by lots of other horse people. When she recovers, Morgan takes her on a tour of a new community and tells her to brace herself for the eccentricity of their leader, King Ezekiel.
I understand your concern, Sheba. You haven't met Carol, nor have I. But if she is a friend of Morgan, we shall consider her a friend of the realm until proven otherwise.
The way Carol reacts pretty much reflects our feelings seeing this for the first time.
I would be speechless if I wasn't already speaking. I don't know what the hell's going on in the most wonderful way.
She attempts to pretend that she doesn't find this performance ridiculous, but later on Ezekiel gets real with her and explains that he does all this medieval king performance because it gives the people here in the kingdom a leader they can get behind and feel protected by. The CGI tiger no doubt helping with that feeling of being protected. Naturally, we're all looking forward to hopefully seeing this tiger rip someone apart. Much like Eugene, the way King Ezekiel talks adds a lot of charm to the series, but the charm soon starts to feel like out of place goofiness. For now though, he's a lot of fun to watch.
You have been addressed by the king, yet you remain silent. Do I detect skepticism? Perhaps you think me mad.
The kingdom may look like paradise, untouched by the troubles of the outside world, but they too are under the control of the Saviours. King Ezekiel and his top men keeping this arrangement a secret from the community to keep up the illusion of their freedom. Carol finds herself a house just outside the gates so that she can live alone, but then Ezekiel comes knocking with a gift to let her know that she's still a friend of the kingdom. The opening is a montage of Dwight's daily life in the sanctuary, which is the main base of operations for the Saviours. You see him enjoying the perks of upper management, while also being cruel to the lower tiers to maintain that power level. And all the while we have the song A Town Called Malice by The Jam playing. The lyrics and the vibe of this song match perfectly with this opening montage. One of Dwight's duties is checking in on Daryl, who is being kept in a dark prison without clothes or warmth. And he's being tortured by having the same song playing over and over, set to an uncomfortably high volume. The song is called Easy Street, and it is a sweet little jingle, but you can imagine wanting to pour acid into your ears after the 5th consecutive listen. When he's finally given some clothes to wear, it's this dehumanising potato sack looking thing with the letter A sprayed on it, making him look like property rather than a person. Psychologically speaking, it makes it easier to mistreat someone when they have their identity stripped away. In this episode, it's revealed that Dwight had a wife that Negan stole to be one of his many wives. More specifically, she offered to be his wife in exchange for Negan sparing Dwight's life, something of which Negan agreed to, but still burnt Dwight's face as a punishment. There's a brief moment of hope where Daryl notices his door was left ajar, and so he makes a break for freedom, getting as far as tasting fresh air before the Saviours surround him again.
I am everywhere. And this was your shot to prove to me that that fundamental fact was sinking in, and you failed.
I like that despite all the torture he's endured so far, he's still not willing to bend the knee, and he also refuses to denounce his name. Negan demands that everyone here identifies by the name Negan, and this is how he tests their loyalty to him.
Who are you?
Negan.
The episode ends with Dwight having a brief chat with Daryl, where it's obvious that he relates to Daryl's situation, but doesn't have the courage to stand up against the mistreatment, and furthermore to admit that he's not the same person that Negan's conditioning him to be. The Alexandrites are busy getting supplies ready for the Saviours when they turn up a few days early, with Negan delivering yet another classic line.
Dun 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 dun. Little pig, let me in.
Before explaining why he's here, he bashes the walker's head in and expects gratitude for his service.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Then he gets Rick to hold the bat for him. Just another piece of masterful manipulation. Rick tells them that they already set aside half the supplies, but Negan says no. He will decide what they take, as Negan is the one who decides what half actually means. And it includes taking their furniture and anything else that fondles his fun sack.
This is the kind of thing that just tickles my balls. A little cooperation, and everything is pleasant as punch.
Dwight is being a big meanie too, by taking all of Rosita's guns and water and telling her to go find Daryl's bike and bring it back to him.
Don't take too long.
Negan asks how Maggie's doing, and Gabriel steps in to share the news.
Do you care to pay your respects?
Holy crap! You are creepy as shit. Sneaking up on me wearing that collar with that freaky ass smile?
My apologies.
As they look down at Maggie's grave, Rick catches Gabriel wiping mud off his trousers, suggesting that he hastily made this fake grave for Maggie to trick Negan into thinking she's gone. This is genius levels of quick thinking from Gabriel, and it's cool to actually see him stepping up for once. Carl protests the Saviors taking more than they agreed upon and holds a gun up to them. Negan says he respects his courage, but as punishment he's going to take all of their guns too. And when Negan checks the stock list, he sees that 2 guns are missing and says there will be consequences if they don't find the last 2 guns for him. So Rick goes into panic mode, calling the town meeting to plead with the people to give up any guns they might be hiding, and eventually he finds them in Spencer's secret stash. When Negan finally drives away happy, Rick chastises Spencer for keeping supplies for himself, calling him a weak man. Spencer then mocks Rick's leadership skills.
Oh yeah, we're so lucky. You've led us all to the promised land, isn't that right, Rick? I guess Glenn and Abraham were lucky too?
You say anything like that again to me, I'll break your jaw, knock your teeth out.
Michonne goes out on the road and is emotionally wrecked to see that the Saviors burnt the mattresses they stole. They didn't even want these mattresses. They just wanted Alexandria to suffer. Not only is Maggie not dead, but also her baby survived her bout of illness. The doctor confirming in the hilltop where she's hiding out that her illness was her placenta separating from the uterus, or something medical. Gregory, who has now recovered from his stabbing, has a big problem with them burying Abraham and Glenn in the hilltop, as it will indicate to the Saviors that the 2 communities are in cahoots. And he's right to want to keep this union a secret, for the sake of the safety of his people. He is being a massive pussy about it, but once you've dealt with the Saviors, you know there's no standing against them. Later that night, the Saviors attack the hilltop by opening their gates and rolling in an armoured car, which is blasting this loud classical music, attracting a whole heap of walkers to come in and cause chaos. Jesus puts on his ass-kicking sandals, while Sasha attempts to break the locks on the car, and then we have Gregory, true to form, literally hiding away in the shadows. Maggie is the one who ultimately saves the day by driving a tractor over the car. Yeah, that was fun. The Saviors arrive the next day, and Greg is kissing arse immediately, hoping they will just take what they need and go. And as they do go to leave, he attempts to give up Maggie, thinking she's hiding in the closet. But upon opening the closet, he realises she's hiding somewhere else. And then he pretends that the gift he actually wanted to give them was this crate of whiskey. Maggie clops him round the chops for the disrespect, and says he needs to start treating her as a resident here, and also start calling her by her actual name.
Not dear, not honey. Maggie Ree.
That's a nice touch that she actually said her marital surname. It's easy to forget that she was married to Glenn, because we never got to see the wedding as they skipped over it. Watching from the bushes, Carl and Enid finally kiss, so they can label themselves a couple now. Well, I don't know if they actually do, but I'm going to, because once you kiss Carl, you're no longer single. Jesus jumps into the back of the Saviour's truck so he can leave a trail, and notices that Carl is stowed away too, but I'm guessing he's got a different goal in mind. Unexpectedly, we open with a shot of a beach, and we see these 2 characters taking care of the washed up walkers. The older girl tells the younger girl to stop, as the walker she's about to stab is still alive. And it's Tara? What? We flash back to the time before this, and she's with this character who's mostly just been in the background up until now. His name is Heath, and he's arguing the case that everyone in this world is selfish, and that's the way it needs to be for people to survive. So why should they keep scavenging food for Alexandria?
I get it now. If it's you or someone else, you choose you.
Later they come across this bridge where Tara finds a duffel bag stuck in a big pile of sand, and when she pulls it out, the sand collapses, revealing these sandy walkers within. She then got backed up against the railing while Heath was fighting his own set of walkers, and she got sent over the edge into the river below, and that somehow ended with her on the beach still alive. When she does wake up on the beach, she finds that the older girl, we'll give her the placeholder name Moana, left her some water and a spear. For some reason, Tara doesn't take this as a sign that Moana is to be trusted, when she could have easily just left your ass on the beach, or worse yet, killed you as you're a stranger. She then stalks Moana back to her base camp and sees that it's a community entirely made up of women. Tara should be thrilled, right? But instead of announcing herself peacefully, she ends up knocking one of them out and making a right scene.
Look, I'm cool. I'm not here to hurt anyone.
And then they question her for a while, in a dinner conversation that's super boring, so I'm not going to drag you down into this boredom with me. In summary, they agree to let her go in the morning, as long as she's escorted by two of the ladies, who then try and kill her in an act of deception, for whatever reason they had. And then once again, Tara's assisted by Moana, who then helps her get back to the bridge where Heath was, but he's no longer around, and I'm pretty sure this is the last time we see him in the show, so I really shouldn't have bothered giving him a name. Damn it, I broke my own rules. Anyway, Tara heads back home wearing some goofy sunglasses, perfectly appropriate for receiving the news about the people who were killed while she was away, including her girlfriend Denise. As they approach the sanctuary, Jesus says they should jump out from the truck now and continue on foot. Cole says he doesn't know how to tuck and roll, and he wants Jesus to show him the way. But this was a trick so that Cole could be transported through the gates.
Show me first.
When the saviors start unloading the truck, they stumble upon Carl, who starts firing at them.
I only want Negan. He killed my friend. No one else needs to die.
Damn. You are adorable. Did you pick that gun because it looks cool?
Anyone else think it's stupid that he held Negan in his line of sight and didn't fire his gun? At this point, your chances of walking out of this alive are near zero, so you might as well shoot him like you plan to. Well, it's too late now, as Dwight has him disarmed on the floor, and Negan invites him to come in and take a look around. Negan shows him his loyal followers, who take the knee whenever he enters the room. Then he shows him his many wives, who all look very happy to be here. He insists that they all dress in black skimpy dresses, and he basically has his pick whenever he chooses to have his pick. Well, that explains why he's always smiling. And yes, it goes without saying that this is a messed up thing to do, but this is Negan. We wouldn't expect any better of him. The next stop is Negan's bedroom, where instead of killing Carl, he demands to see his eye socket in exchange for the two men he killed.
Christ! That is disgusting. No wonder you covered that up.
He weirdly feels bad for making Carl upset, but isn't done making his demands. His final demand is for Carl to sing to him, and Carl chooses a song that Laurie used to sing to him when he was a kid.
Make me happy when the skies are gray.
Rosita is laying into Eugene, as he's arguing against the idea of making her a bullet, knowing that she's going to attempt at taking Negan out by herself, which, as Eugene rightly states, is a stupid idea. Rosita says that he owes it to Abraham to step up here, especially after everything he put them through when he was pretending to be a scientist. Back to Negan. He takes Carl back home and says that he's going to wait around until Rick comes back from his supply run. He hangs around Rick's house, making fun of Olivia's weight before suggesting they have sex.
We're running really low on everything. We're practically starving here.
Starving? You? By practically, you mean not really? Really? I am sorry for having been so rude to you just now. I think it would be enjoyable to screw your brains out. I mean, if You're agreeable to it.
Gotta give her credit for having the balls to respond in this way. He then picks up Judith and sits with her while they wait for Rick. Although he's obviously not going to harm the baby, you still feel nervous that he could. It's a super uncomfortable feeling.
I could just settle into the suburbs. What do you think about that?
Rick still isn't back home, so Negan's cooking dinner with Carl. The motivation for his behaviour at this point is beyond strange, and this uncertainty keeps you feeling like something really bad is about to happen. But for now, let's check on Rick and see what he's up to. He and Aaron found this boat of supplies in the middle of a lake, where the previous owner has set up walkers like floating sea mines as a deterrent for any would-be thief. The dinghy they have is riddled with holes, meaning they're going to have to transfer to this canoe as they paddle across. It's at this moment where it dawned on me that I should be scared right now, as this situation combines three things I'd be scared of in real life: deep murky lakes, zombies and sea mines. I know they're not sea mines, but they're still floating things on chains in water, which can kill you in a horrific way, so they're kind of like sea mines. Speaking of which, how are they floating right now? I thought zombies couldn't swim. Anyway, they load up the truck with their plunder, and as they finish up, a weird pair of boots is seen watching them from the other side of the pond. Someone slips a key under Daryl's door, allowing him to try and escape for a second time. This time though, he plays it much smarter, by first finding some clothes and fueling up on energy from peanut butter, the only condiment that gives you the raw strength to cave in someone's head with a metal pipe. With Rick still not back on the scene, Spencer decides to kiss up to Negan, and as they play pool together, he takes the opportunity to badmouth Rick, assuming that Negan will like him for it. But Negan susses him out as a cowardly kiss ass, and makes an example out of him.
You know what I'm thinking? Because I have a guess. It's because you got no guts. There they are. They were inside you the whole time. You did have guts. I've never been so wrong in my whole life.
Told you something bad was going to happen. Although no one liked Spencer, so maybe it's not that bad. Rosita's reached her boiling point and takes a shot at Negan with the bullet Eugene made, but she somehow manages to hit Lucille instead. Negan is very upset that his bat is now damaged and threatens to damage Rosita's face if she doesn't fess up to who made the bullet. She persists in saying that she's the one who made it and is bold enough to press her face up against the blade and make the cut herself to take away his satisfaction. Negan still doesn't believe her, so he orders this lady to kill someone and she chooses Olivia. Did we care about Olivia? She seemed like a nice lady, I suppose. Finally, Rick arrives on scene, and Negan tells him to be grateful that he brought his son back home alive and well. He also got rid of Spencer, who was conspiring against him, and also says he now has one less mouth to feed by getting rid of Olivia.
And by looking at her, that mouth did some major damage.
Again, so harsh, but very funny. Eugene fesses up to making the bullets before anyone else gets hurt, and Negan decides he can put Eugene to work back at the sanctuary. The episode ends with Rick going to the hilltop, seeing Maggie and the baby are doing well, and also seeing Daryl has escaped. It's a nice moment, and marks the start of them all agreeing that they need to take out the saviors. Gabriel is acting strange by deciding to pack up all their food supplies and take them somewhere. For what reason is unknown, but I'm guessing we'll find out soon. Gregory is being a stick in the mud over the rebellion against the Saviours, and he's right with his opinion to say that they're completely outnumbered, and the Hilltop people aren't trained for combat, so would be useless in this war.
Who would train all this cannon fodder?
I will.
Rhetorical, okay? I don't want to know.
Everyone else in this room is all up for it, but Gregory's mind is unchanged by their pleas. Again, even though he's right, he's still being a pussy. Jesus says that with some help from some willing rebels at the hilltop, they should go meet King Ezekiel and ask for his help. Ezekiel is on the fence about helping and asks Morgan for his counsel, who is probably the worst person in this room you could ask, because you know his answer is going to be to respond with peace and love and hugs, unless it's that one dude that one time that you kill, but then you go back to being a pacifist right after. Even after Rick recites a fairy tale that reflects their current situation, a style of dialogue that should titillate this Renaissance wannabe, Ezekiel remains undecided.
I shall deliver my decree in the morn.
His voice is still funny to me. The king says, nah, we ain't helping you. We've got a sweet deal with the saviors, and to disrupt that would mean we lose peace in the kingdom.
You call yourself a damn king. You sure as hell don't act like one.
Even though Daryl insults the king, he's still offered refuge here, and Rick insists that he takes it. On the drive back to Alexandria, they encounter a roadblock, and between these cars, the saviors have set up an explosive tripwire to take out a large herd of walkers. Seeing an opportunity to scavenge these explosives, Rosita disarms the detonator, or whatever this is, and the rest of the gang scramble to collect the dynamite before the herd gets here. Rick gets the idea to drive the cars into the walker herds to cut them down using the wire. Okay, visually speaking, that was pretty great. But in results, they only managed to cut the numbers down by half. So I think they would have just been better off running away from the herd. And they barely managed to make it out alive doing this. So it seems like it's all the risk with no reward. Simon's crew meet them in Alexandria, saying they're going to search the place to see if Daryl's here. Some of their searching techniques make no sense. Like, yeah, better check this shallow bookshelf by knocking the books off of it. Maybe Daryl shrunk himself down to the size of a chipmunk and is hiding in the cookbook. Or maybe he's under this tableware. Let's just smash everything to make sure. They search the food supplies as well, and to everyone's surprise, the shelves are empty. When the saviors are satisfied that he's not here, Rick and the gang talk about why Gabriel disappeared with all the food.
That son of a bitch. Stole our shit and ran.
I don't believe it. That's not Gabriel. He wouldn't do that to us.
Following his trail, they suddenly get surrounded by these weird-looking people who clearly aren't the saviors, so Rick smiles. I think this is why he's smiling, but let's keep watching to find out. The kingdom are in the middle of their scheduled trade with the saviors, when Ezekiel's top guy Richard and this Weasley guy from the saviors hold their guns up to each other. Neither of these group leaders are pleased with what their guys are doing and want them to stop bickering so they can finish the deal. Weasel guy is the antagonistic type, as you can tell, so I'm guessing this won't be the last time they clash. Richard is secretly plotting an attack on the saviors, and he wants Daryl's help. He plans to ambush them on the road and leave a trail of evidence directly towards Carol's house, rationalising that she wants to die anyway, so she would be the perfect fall guy. Richard, not realising Daryl's deep connection with her, sends Daryl into raging friend mode. Back to Rick, he's led into the scrapyard, which is the home of these weirdos. I don't use the term weirdos unfairly here. They have this weird dialect of only speaking in short, sharp sentences.
Away from Tamiel now. Your words now. Want something now.
Okay, it's rant time. Why are they speaking like this? They've reverted to primitive communication over the course of around 2 to 3 years since the walkers arrived. These people wouldn't have spoken like this pre-apocalypse, working their 9-to-5 jobs or whatever. And it's not just this woman here. The whole lot speak like it.
Expect us.
You could understand if these were children who grew up in the apocalypse without the access to education, but even then it wouldn't make much sense with the existence of parents who presumably would speak normally. But under the presented circumstances, speaking like this...
We take, we don't bother.
Ridiculous.
Tamiel, Brian. Show Rick up.
Nope, that's it. I'm done. What does that even mean? Fuck off with that shit. Take your stupid language and shove it up your asshole. Let's just get through this story. They captured Gabriel, and he pleads with these people, called the Scavengers, to help Rick's group defeat the Saviors, stating that if the Scavengers kill Rick's people, the Saviors will be angry about their supply chain being lessened. Their leader, Jadis, of course she's got a stupid weird name, wants to see if Rick is the kind of man she wants to bother dealing with, and tests him by throwing him into a pit. What awaits him in this pit is this armoured walker named Winslow that looks like a walker cosplaying as a medieval morning star. Fighting Winslow is brutal stuff. Rick can't so much as hold him off without being cut by those enormous spikes. Using Michonne's advice, he tears down some of the wall to pin Winslow on the floor, and now he's able to put an end to him. They agree to help Rick's group on the condition that they get lots of guns for them.
Guns. A lot. A lot. And then we fight your fight. A lot. A lot.
Before they leave, Gabriel explains that he was forced to bring the supplies back from Alexandria, as the scavengers were waiting for someone to take them from the boat, so they didn't have to get it themselves. Trying to understand and explain the actions of these trash pile tossers is a tiresome chore, and we need to get out of this place before my ears start bleeding from the frustration of having to hear them say one more word.
Jars and guns. Guns and jars.
Daryl reunites with Carol and decides not to tell her about the people Negan killed, hoping to prevent her from getting involved. He decides that same evening to leave the kingdom and go back to the hilltop, but not before giving Tigress some goodbye head scritches. Dwight discovers that Daryl has escaped, and what horrible timing, because now Negan is back, and he's definitely going to punish someone for letting this happen. Before we find out who's going on Negan's naughty list, we see Eugene being introduced to his new home. Fearing the worst, he braces himself to be locked in a cage or something, but instead he's treated to a nice room, and this hard-nut biker lady says he can have anything he wants.
Yes, you can have anything. What do you want?
Can I have lobster?
No, you can't have lobster. What the hell do you think this is?
What he can have, however, is a beer full of fridge. A beer full of fridge. Why am I the Sheriff of Rottingham?
He was caught poaching in the king's forest. He dared to kill a king's dare. Dared to kill a king's deer.
I meant to say fridge full of beer, a big jar of pickles, and some lovely music.
We're on an easy street, and it feels so sweet.
I love the hilarious contrast of him enjoying this song. Eugene doesn't get these perks for free though. He has to earn his place here. Seeing that he gets the protection here that he's always craved, and also being fearful of punishments, he demonstrates his worth to Negan by showing him how to fortify his walkers, using the method of encasing the walker's body with metal, an idea of which is a throwback to his discovery of how tough it was to kill this walker that he found in a bullet factory. Later on, Negan's wives come to pay him a visit, and he insists that he doesn't want them to do anything they wouldn't do under normal circumstances. And if they insist on amusing him in some way, they can instead play video games with him. Probably a good idea not to bone Negan's wives, because even if it's offered to you, you never know if he's going to hold it against you one day. They have a great time with Eugene as he doesn't mistreat them, and they end up asking him if he can make this woman, Amber, a suicide pill, to which he agrees. When they come to collect the pills, however, Eugene realises that these pills probably aren't for Amber, but are for Negan instead, which means he's essentially been tricked. This deception, along with the fact that he's got it better here than he had with Rick, causes him to retract the offer.
Didn't he kill your friends?
Several. But I imagine we killed about 30 or so of his. Turnabout and all that.
You're a coward.
That is a correct assessment.
Dwight was initially blamed for Daryl's escape, as Negan was informed of Sherry also running away, the woman who was married to Dwight before Negan yanked her away for his collection. Dwight goes out looking for his runaway ex, and only finds a letter from her, where she confesses to helping Daryl. So Dwight goes back and uses one of her post-it notes by planting it in the doctor's office, so that when Negan discovers it, he redirects his punishment and puts the hot iron against the doctor's face. That's the like-for-like punishment Dwight was expecting to see, but instead... a pretty cold move by Dwight to avoid getting the other side of his face melted. Michonne and Rick are out scavenging guns for their deal with Jadis, and they come across his abandoned school where they see a soldier walker who's strapped with a serious gun, meaning other soldier walkers are likely nearby. They climb the roof to assess the area, and see there are tons of walkers in the adjacent fairground. Michonne pops off a few comedy shots to show off her aim. I thought walkers were alerted by gunfire, but they seem unfazed by this noise. Continuing this comedy, they fall through the school roof onto a conveniently placed mattress, and as Lady Luck is smiling down upon them, they've stumbled upon a large stash of MRE pouches and canned food. They spend the night dining and chatting. It was all pretty skippable, so I did. There's a cool part where Rick and Michonne are taking out the walkers to collect their guns, but then Rick spots this CGI deer and almost dies when he climbs up to get a vantage point in shooting it. Michonne fears the worst, seeing the walkers swarming in to eat something, but it turns out to be the deer as Rick rolled into a nearby cage. I just said Rick rolled. That wasn't intentional. I almost wish I didn't press skip earlier, because before we know it, we're back with the trash pile tossers again. And Jadis isn't satisfied with the amount of guns they brought back, and negotiates with Rick to get some more before the deal can be completed. Rosita, tired of playing these games, comes to Sasha and requests her help to take out Negan. Richard is seen burying his daughter's backpack, presumably as he's ready to move on from her death. But that's not exactly the case, as we're about to find out in this episode. As the Kingdom head to deliver their tribute, they encounter a roadblock made up of trolleys, made into the shape of an arrow, which leads to this larger sized grave, dug right next to the small sized grave where Katie's backpack is buried. And there's also a sign saying "Bury me here." Ooh, spooky. When they arrive at the trade point, they see a melon is missing from their truck, which leads to the Saviors threatening consequences for coming up short. Richard steps up, willing to accept punishment for the shortage.
Let's do it. Okay.
No! The kid gets shot in the leg, and despite their best efforts back on home turf, they were unable to save him. This traumatic event sends Morgan back into a downward spiral, and then he makes a shocking discovery. Is it just me, or was that kick weak as hell for a guy supposedly in a rage? Oof, take that, you silly crate. Morgan comes to the conclusion that Richard hid one of these melons so that he could be killed off and buried next to his daughter, thus bringing tensions between the Kingdom and the Saviors to a point of declaring war. He of course had no expectation that anyone else would be harmed in this plan, but Morgan isn't willing to accept his apologies, and the next day, while Richard tries to fix what he did, Morgan delivers his justice, and then tells everyone what Richard did.
He did this. He wanted to die for us before. He wanted it to be him.
Morgan, feeling emotionally burnt out, decides to stop keeping secrets from Carol and tells her about the people Negan took out.
Negan killed Glenn and Abraham.
What?
Negan killed Glenn and Abraham.
Carol feels inspired once more to be a part of the community and joins the Kingdom in their preparations to finally do something about the Saviors. The Saviors are once more making a surprise visit to the hilltop, causing Maggie and Daryl to scramble into a hiding place in the food cellar.
I'll find you.
When the coast is clear, they come out of hiding, and in this moment of calm, Daryl breaks down and apologises, believing that he caused Glenn's death.
It wasn't your fault.
But it is his fault though, let's be real. The Saviors have come to collect the Hilltop Doctor, as Negan barbecued their previous Doctor. The Hilltop Doctor protests that he needs to stay here, without giving away that the reason he's needed here is because of Maggie. Sasha and Rosita post up in a high building and scope out the sanctuary to try and take out Negan, but they can't get a clean shot on him. While keeping their eye down the scope, they also see Eugene being well kept and seemingly now in charge of managing the Walker barrier. While they wait for their opportunity, they spend some time mending their fragile relationship, where Rosita was previously bitter towards her because of her love affair with Abraham. As the sun sets, they run out of patience and take the fight to the ground floor.
You can hardly handle a guard.
Get up. You're getting out.
Eugene refuses to be rescued and runs away to avoid conflict. And then to Rosita's surprise, Sasha locks herself into the compound so that she can go alone on a kamikaze mission, giving Rosita the chance to run back home and regroup. Sasha somehow managed to not get shot down during her Rambo rendition, but she's not out of the woods yet, as this creepy guy has opened up her cell and is threatening to do something, well, the worst kind of thing. But then Negan steps in to shut it down, because if Negan is anything, he's an advocate for protecting women's rights to freedom from SA. Yep, that's Negan alright. Negan stabs him in the neck and leaves the knife with Sasha so that she can make a choice to either end her own life or stop this guy from turning into a zombie. Or I guess you could do both. When Negan sees that she chooses to live, he tells her that he has big plans in mind for her, so when Eugene comes to visit her later, she pleads with him to get her a weapon so that she can take herself out before she's used for anything horrific, and doing this will rob Negan of the advantage. Eugene comes back with the death pills he made earlier. Sasha silently despairs, as she actually wanted a weapon to attack Negan while his guard was down. Tara goes back to Moana and her people, asking them to join the fight, and if they refuse, Rick and the others are waiting nearby to come in and take their guns. Kind of a lose-lose situation for these people. Even after Rick's group stop a walker herd from entering their home, this leader lady still refuses to be a part of it, but she sees she has no choice in letting them take their guns. As an interesting twist for the end of the episode, Dwight has snuck away from the sanctuary to tell Rick's group that he wants to be a part of the rebellion.
Okay. Get on your knees.
A really interesting opening to this season finale. Sasha is in this pitch black container, and the only thing visible is her getting emotional as she listens to music. We find out why she's in here and where she's going towards the end of the episode. Dwight informs Rick's group that the Saviors plan on attacking tomorrow, which gives them time to prepare for a standoff. They're skeptical in trusting him, but don't really see much of a choice, as all they know is Negan is coming tomorrow, and Dwight possibly being a snake doesn't change that. So Dwight heads back to the sanctuary in order not to raise suspicions with his absence. In the previous episode, Gregory made plans to run away, and so now Maggie takes his place as leader of Hilltop. A bit of a risky hire considering she'll be on maternity leave soon. Her first choice as leader is the high-stakes decision on joining the fight in Alexandria. Where she was previously all for it, she is now conflicted knowing there are vulnerable people here like Judith who need to be kept away from the war zone. Not so much on the fence anymore is King Ezekiel, who asks that Morgan once again comes to aid his old friends and stop being a peace-loving hippie.
The Saviors are a dragon with many heads. We must seek allies in this endeavor.
It's pretty satisfying seeing Carol suited up and marching with the kingdom to war. Oh, he's brought the tiger with him. This is going to be good. The trash pile tossers arrive on scene, prepared to stand with Alexandria in this fateful fight. When the Saviors arrive, Rick's group are stunned at seeing Eugene on the microphone as Negan's mouthpiece.
Options are 0 to none. Compliance and fealty are your only escape. Bottom line in it, you may thrive or you may die.
And then they're even more surprised when Jadis and her group double-cross Rick, claiming that Negan made them a better offer. Negan tells them that he brought Sasha here to trade her for the weapons they scavenged. And this is a good time to flash back to Sasha and see her taking the pill that Eugene made. While she mentally prepares herself for death, she reminisces on the good times with Abraham.
You said it before. Oh my, that is living.
You're an idiot.
So, when Negan opens the coffin, he gets a nice little surprise.
Holy goddamn! Honey, god damn it!
Jadis wounds Rick to keep him in check, and when the war dies down, with Rick's group appearing to have lost, she hand delivers him to Negan. Even as Negan tells Rick that he's about to lose everyone he loves, Rick is so numb to Negan's punishment at this point that he's no longer scared of him.
I told you already, I'm gonna kill you. All of you.
And just as Negan goes to bash Cole's head in, Tigress mauls one of Negan's guards. I really enjoyed King Ezekiel's battle cry as he saves the day here.
Alexandria will not fall! Not on this day!
Negan back home inquires into how Sasha died inside the coffin, and Eugene comes up with the convincing lie that she simply ran out of oxygen. The season ends with Negan rallying his troops to prepare for war, and back in Alexandria, Maggie arrives on scene to show that the Hilltop will join their fight. Probably would have been more useful if you came about half an hour earlier though. Well, that's it for this video, and for the first time, I'm proud to announce that I have a producer-level Patreon supporter, who happens to also be a high-ranking member of our Discord server. So, cheers to you, Scout, and cheers to you, my other Patreon members, who will from here on be in the credits section of my videos. And to the rest of you watching, I appreciate you. You're helping me get closer to quitting my job by liking my videos and being part of the journey with me. Thank you all, and see you on the next one.